All right. Well, good afternoon, folks. I'm speaking from sunny and warm Phoenix, Arizona, where we can't seem to get under triple-digit temperatures. We've still got a couple more days of 100 degrees and more. I hope winter gets here quicker. I hope y'all are happy and healthy despite this nasty bug that's been going around. Last year at the 2019 Tribal EPA conference, it was held down in Maricopa, Arizona. I gave a presentation, a review of the 2017 Census of Agriculture. And this year, since we're 3 years away from that, I thought I would talk more about the upcoming 2022 Census of Agriculture. But first, I'd like to review what the USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service is. If you could go to the next page, please. All right. Within the USDA, we're the official U.S. statistics for Arizona agriculture. Our mission is to provide timely, accurate, and useful data in service to agriculture. We are basically the supply side of the supply and demand equation. We tell everybody from researchers to tribal officials to legislatures to everybody that is interested, we tell them the supply of food for the most part in the United States. We tell them how many cattle there are. We tell them how much wheat is going to be produced this year. We tell them how much milk is going to be produced. And it's all part of the supply side of the equation for those economics people. And the data is all collected from farmers and ranchers across the United States. And when we receive the individual reports, we guarantee that anything they tell us is confidential by law. The reports are all combined together, and then we set estimates and publish on the state level, the county level, and now even the reservation level. Next page, please. So I want to kind of explain what NASS does. We have two large programs. One is the Census of Agriculture, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But we also have our annual statistical estimating program. This is the one where we produce hundreds of reports throughout the year on major commodities that are produced. And to differentiate the annual estimating program for census is we use samples of the population to draw from. In other words, let's say we want to estimate the number of cattle in the United States. And I'll just use an example. We have 10,000 cattle producers. We may take a sample of 500 of those, collect the data from those 500, and when we sum it all together, we can expand it to represent the 10,000 farmers. I just want to emphasize the annual estimating program are samples of the population. And with those samples, we can estimate number of farms. We can estimate your major crops. You may be familiar with our monthly crop production reports that go out every month. This last one that came out, well, one's coming out in 2 days on Friday the 9th. We'll have a forecast of corn production, soybean production, an estimate of what's going to be produced. For For livestock, every January we collect cattle information and sheep and goat information. And sometimes in July we do cattle inventories again. And then we have economic surveys where our big one is called the resource management, where we take the pulse of the finances of producers across the country to see how well are they doing. What are your costs to produce a commodity and how much revenue did you get? And we combine all this information, and this actual report is mandated by Congress. They have mandated that we, on an annual basis, collect the financial information for a sample of producers and give a report to the Secretary of Agriculture of how well or how bad farmers and ranchers are doing. So contrast that to our Census of Agriculture, which we conduct every 5 years. Our last one was in 2017. NASS began doing the Census of Agriculture in 1997. So we did 97, 2002, 2007, 2012, 2017, and so our sixth one will be 2022. Before 1997, it was the Department of Commerce, and they started doing the Census of Agriculture in the 1840s. So the Census of Agriculture has been around for a long time, but to differentiate it from the annual program, it's a census, which means we collect data from everyone. Every known farmer and rancher in the United States is contacted to collect data from them. So it's a lot more expensive, and that's one reason why it's only done every 5 years. But it's similar to the population census that's going on right now. The 2020 population census is they're trying to contact every person in the United States. So I just wanted to make that differentiation. The census is a whole bunch of data that the annual estimating program doesn't have. But all these statistics are necessary to manage and improve the efficiency of USDA programs. But it also includes all the minor commodities that we don't see on the annual estimating program. For instance, teff production or jojoba acreage, or there's probably a bunch of other small commodities that you never really hear statistics about, but it's most likely it's covered in the Census of Agriculture. Next slide, please. So as I said, the census is 100% coverage of all known farms and ranches in the United States. And it's the most complete set of agriculture data that's available. And it's the only source of uniform, comprehensive, and objective information for every county and most tribes in the United States. Now, when I say uniform, what I mean is the questionnaire is the same, whether it's coming out of Arizona, Utah, Virginia, or Washington. The questionnaire is virtually set up the same way so that we're all collecting data the same way. It's a uniform way of collecting the data. And it's very comprehensive. It encompasses everything that you can think of. And we collect data on operator characteristics in the census that we don't collect on our annual estimating program. And what I mean by that is gender, male versus female, age, veteran status, race. And then we also collect on production practices. Do they no-till? on their farmland? Is it organic? Is it irrigated? Do they practice rotational grazing? And there's all kinds of production practices that we ask about. And then we ask about income and expenditures and just a whole lot more on the Census of Agriculture. It's very detailed. But the primary thing about the Census of Agriculture, it's more about a count of people. And these people who are farmers and ranchers. It's just not your typical US citizen. It is those that are farmers and ranchers across the country. So it's a chance for these farmers and ranchers to tell their story, and over time, how is agriculture changing in your community? Next slide, please. So the definition of a farm. This definition has been around since 1974. Any place from which $1,000 worth of agricultural products were produced and sold, or normally would have been sold during the census year. Now, there's been talk possibly, well, you often wonder, why hasn't the definition changed since 1974? Why isn't it $5,000, for example? Well, if we raised it to $5,000, there are some states, I think West Virginia and maybe Texas, that would, their number of farms would be reduced by like 70%. So I guess politically it doesn't sound good, so we've kept it at $1,000 worth of sales since 1974, and I don't anticipate it changing in my career. So next slide, please. Let me tell you a little bit about American Indian. We first started counting individual operators in 2007. And the reason was, it was felt that the American Indians were being underrepresented, under an undercount of the number of producers. And the only way to prove that was to count individual operators on tribal lands. So in 2022, this will be the fourth time that we are counting individual American Indian, Native American ranchers and producers, ranchers and farmers. And in order to do that, we ask each tribe to provide a list of farmers and ranchers' names and their contact information, because we're trying to get 100% of the farmers and ranchers in the United States. We initially did this before the 2007 Census of Agriculture, where we went to all the tribal officials and asked them, can we conduct an ag census on your tribal lands? And we actually hired tribal enumerators, data collectors in each of these censuses. In the 2012 census, just in Arizona, we hired about 80, they were mostly Navajo, Hopi enumerators, to help us collect data across Arizona, mainly in the Hopi and tribal, or the Hopi and Navajo nations. And we'll probably do the same thing in the spring of 2023, so they can collect data about what happened in 2022. Okay, next slide. There's just a few examples that came out of the 2017 Census of Agriculture. And you'll notice the second one there is we had a release called the American Indian Reservations. It was released in August of last year. So we had a special release by tribe of agricultural statistics, number of farms, number of livestock, number of acres of crops, etc., specific to the tribe's reservation level data. The next slide, please. And we also have other releases that that show state and county profiles. They show race, ethnicity, and gender profiles based on the census data that was collected. It's usually like a 2-page profile of, say, I'll just say Navajo County in Arizona. We have acreage there, crops produced, number of cattle, male producers, female producers, average age of producers. I mean, just a whole gamut of data that was collected from the census. Next slide, please. So why do we do this? What are the benefits? Well, initially it was to solve the problem of what was believed to be an undercount of American Indian farms. Just as an example, in 2002, so this was before we started counting individual operators on tribal land, Arizona's number of farms was 7,300, but only 71 of them were operated by American Indians. And in 2007, when we began counting individual American Indian producers, our number of farms more than doubled to 15,600, and we counted almost 4,400 American Indian producers. And then this last census, 2017, we have 19,000 farms approximately, and over 11,000 American Indian producers, and that's just in Arizona. So these 3 times that we've counted American Indian individual operators, we've gone from 71 in 2002 to over 11,000 that were actually accounted for, if you will. So what it boils down to is we have a greater understanding of agriculture in your communities, and a lot of the other USDA agencies, like Farm Service Agency, they were able to open up offices in Indian country that they normally wouldn't have because they didn't have the numbers to prove that, well, we need an office there. NRCS did the same thing. After the 2007 census, there were a number of new offices opened up in northern Arizona due to the results of the census. And it was all because of a new count of American Indian producers. And at the U of A, the University of Arizona Extension Service, they got additional funding to help take care of these newly counted American Indians producers. Lastly, this information can be used to help write grant proposals. I think yesterday when John Busterud mentioned that $40 million worth of grants were funded, I would guess that some of those proposals showed the results from the 2017 census as a little bit of ammunition, if you will, information that helped push the grant through so you could get funded. And that is all I have. If you go to the next screen, I have my contact information. In New Mexico, my counterpart is Longinio Bustillos. We have a state statistician virtually in every state in the country. Arizona and New Mexico take care of our states primarily, of course. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
All right, Dave. Looks like we don't have any questions in the chat box. I just checked and nothing coming through. If people would like to unmute their lines, we have plenty of time to ask questions verbally if you'd like to unmute your line. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Dave. Well, I think that does it. Thank you for that presentation. Like I said, this one's ending a little early, but all his presentation is this PowerPoint is available on the Tribal EPA website under this this time slot for this presentation, and we also recorded this, and the record will be available as well on the website probably tomorrow once it's downloaded. So thank you all for attending the session, and take care.
Thank you very much.